everyone. So now I'm going to talk about the lumbar plexus. Okay, so the lumbar plexus has contributions from the anterior rami, specifically through the spinal nerves T12 to L4. All right, we didn't really discuss in the lab manual any of the trunks, divisions, or cords, so you don't have to worry about that. You just have to worry about the nerves and the function and how to identify them on the models or on the cadavers. But I like to use the acronym I golf. So we have these 6 nerves. So each of them representing the ilioinguinal, iliohypogastric, genitofemoral, obturator, lateral, femoral, cutaneous, and femoral nerves. So remember, always write complete answers. I know I'm not writing in here because I'm trying to save time, but just make sure you know and understand all of these. Remember, we talked about a specific muscle group when we were showing you the cadavers on how to identify these specific nerves. And that muscle group is your iliopsoas muscle group. Remember, the iliopsoas muscle group is made up of 2 muscles, the iliacus muscle and the psoas major. And I'm kind of drawing it like this. Let me turn the light off so you can see. Okay, you guys see that? So the psoas major is kind of like this long loin that goes up and down. And then we have the iliacus muscle toward the iliac fossa by the iliac bone, the ilium bone. All right, and then kind of like behind that, we will have this square muscle called the quadratus lumborum. Okay, and then we will have those 6 nerves coming out of different parts of the iliopsoas muscle group. So on the superior portion of the iliopsoas muscle group, you can either have one branch that will split into 2, or you can have 2 branches that are separate. But you will always see those 2 branches regardless. Out of those 2 branches, which one would be the most superior and which one would be the most inferior out of them, 2 of them? So the most superior will be the iliohypogastric. Gastric is much more higher. Think of your stomach, gastro, right? And then the one right below that will be the ilioinguinal. Inguinal referring to the inguinal region. Remember, kind of like by the pelvis that forms that V. Okay? So out of the 2, it makes sense that hypogastric is much higher than the inguinal. All right? Then on the anterior aspect of that psoas major, you will have a nerve coming out, and that will be the genitofemoral nerve. And it makes sense because all the reproductive system or the genitals are located anteriorly. Okay? Then on the inferior portion of the psoas major, we will have a lateral part and a medial part. Okay? So the lateral part, we will have this big nerve. It's thick. Okay? It's a thick nerve. And then we will have a medial nerve that's somewhat thicker, not thicker, but somewhat thick as well. Okay? So that lateral nerve, it makes sense to call it the femoral nerve. And the medial nerve will be the obturator nerve. Okay? Remember, the obturator foramen will be much more medial, and the femur will be much more lateral. So it just makes sense. Then, kind of like right here by the iliacus muscle, and lateral to the femoral nerve, we will have another branch coming out, and that will be your LFC, or the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. So that's how it's located. To repeat this specific discussion, remember we have the iliopsoas muscle group. When you look at the cadaver, we will remove these organs. that are blocking that specific area, and you should see these specific nerves. So we have the iliohypogastric nerve and the ilioinguinal on the superior portion of the psoas major. But out of those two, the most superior is the iliohypogastric, then the ilioinguinal, because again, it makes sense. Gastric needs to be higher than the inguinal region, right? And then anterior to the psoas major, we will have a nerve kind of like piercing through that muscle and traveling anteriorly, and that will be the genitofemoral. Inferior to the psoas major, we will have a lateral nerve and a medial nerve. The lateral big nerve, large nerve, will be the femoral nerve, and the medial nerve will be the obturator nerve. And lastly, most lateral to the femoral nerve, and kind of by the iliacus muscle, we will have the LFC, or the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. So remember, there will be distractors on the cadaver or whatever. You can get distracted with all these extra things, but don't fret, because remember, you know these. So if you see us tagging something posteriorly, there are only two possibilities, right? Regardless if you see anything extras in there. If you see us tagging something on the anterior side of the psoas major, even though there are multiple fibers coming out of that, and there's that one nerve that we're looking for on the anterior side of the psoas major, what do you think we're tagging? We are tagging the genitofemoral. And the same goes for the inferior portion. But make sure you pay attention to these two nerves. The LFC is definitely much smaller and thinner compared to the femoral nerve. The femoral nerve is pretty significantly large compared to that. So just make sure you really are looking at that carefully. But remember, the femoral nerve will change its name to the saphenous nerve, past kind of like the knee joint. So just remember, you need to understand what it looks like. Just look at the model, look at the information in the lab manual. Again, as always, write complete answers. Remember some key points. There will be distractors, but again, that's why you're being tested to see your understanding of the content. All right? Hopefully this video helped. So keep an eye out for the sacral plexus.